We are in today Psalm 61, and we're inching our way through the Psalms and learning little by little, line by line, precept upon precept. This is how God taught His Word. This is how we learn the most from His Word. We just let Him create the script, and then we go one phrase at a time. So we left off yesterday with David praying, "Oh, prepare," this is verse 7, Psalm 61, 7, the last part of the verse. "Oh, prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him." So David in verse 8 says, "So," this is the last verse, by the way, "So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." So David in this psalm, and we've seen so much of it over the last 2 weeks, he's overwhelmed, he's far from home, he's probably running from his son Absalom, he's probably an older man, and he's very emotionally displaced and overwhelmed. He cries out to God. He says, "Lead me to the rock." And he remembers, you've been a shelter, you're a strong tower. He decides, he recalls future tense, I'm going to one day be with you forever in your tabernacle. So he makes a decision to trust God. David's actions here, in the middle of being overwhelmed, he cries out to God. Great practice. He decides to trust God even when that trust is obscure, okay? He can't see his way through. He then decides to remember and look and recount God's promises. He says, "You've given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. You've promised to prolong my life. You've promised to prolong my throne many generations. You've promised me a forever throne to abide before you forever," which we've gone through all this previously. And then he says, "God, I need right now today your mercy and truth to preserve me." We talked about that yesterday, a dosage of mercy and truth that God has for you each and every day. And then the very last position. So he began the psalm overwhelmed, and you can almost feel his spirit and his emotions come back to a calm peace, a calm accepting of where he is right now, of God's providence, of God's presence. You can almost feel and see God calming his spirit and bringing him to peace where he is right now in life. And so verse 8, he begins with this word, so. So will I. So there's a calm and there's a resolve. I can't fix my circumstances. I can't do what only God can do. What can I do? Well, I can sing praise. So I will. I will choose to sing praise. So there's an act of the will here of David engaging in worship at a time when he probably feels the least like worshiping. Okay, remember up in verse 2, my heart is overwhelmed. Okay, so he most needs to worship. He probably feels the least like worshiping, but he chooses. He chooses to sing praise. I've talked about this before, but I want to reiterate, the entire Psalms are a songbook, and there is something so transformational about you lifting up your heart in song, in worship to God. And there's so many great resources to be able to do that today. I mean, Dana and I use a song service called Spotify. I think my kids use Apple Music. There's others. But I mean, just on demand at your fingertips. You know, if we've sung a song in church that you like "The Lord is my salvation," or "All I have is Christ," or, I mean, so many that I can think of, "He will hold me fast." They're on demand right there. This past week, I decided to do a long bike ride. I had Thursday afternoon on my day off. It was a pretty day. The weather's about to turn. Bike rides are about to go away for a while. And I said to Dane, she was babysitting the grandkids, and because Larry and Mariah were moving into their house. And I said, "I think I'm going to go for a bike ride." She said, "Have a good time." I loaded up my bike and a bottle of water and some snacks and my ball cap and some sunglasses. And I went out to that Farmington River Trail. And it's if you start in Plainville and do the whole trail back to Plainville, all the way up to Simsbury and back, it is, number one, it's beautiful. Number two, it's 32 miles, which is, okay, that's quite a ride. I've done that ride enough times to know if you push too hard, you run out of steam. You have to pace yourself. And this ride I paced myself. but I kept stopping to take pictures because I was actually just totally overwhelmed at the beauty of the fall in New England. And so I'd go 5 or 6 or 7 miles and find a place to stop for a few seconds and take some pictures. And what I did about halfway through that ride, that's about a two, depending on how fast you go, it's 2:15 to 2:45. I think I was on the bike about 2 hours and a half or something like that. But I decided about halfway through just to worship, just to call up my playlists of Shane and Geddes and others, and some favorite songs, and just worship. And I'll tell you, listening to that worship music, looking at God's creation, and there were times on that ride I was just singing out at the top of my lungs. People probably thought I was out of my mind, but it was so reframing and reshaping to my heart. It was so liberating, to be honest with you. Okay, you turn on the news, you open Facebook, you open whatever, and you open the news app, you go to any news channel, it's just a steady stream of darkness, bad news, the worst case scenarios on all channels, okay, on all streams. It's just a steady stream of hopelessness. But you get outside and you get God's truth flowing in your spiritual veins, and it breathes life. God's Spirit breathes so much life into me over about an hour and a half of just thinking about these lyrics to these words while riding that bike. And he ministered to me physically, he ministered to me spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. And it is so powerful. I can't implore you enough. There are so many things to turn to that are numbing in the short term, but destructive in the long term, right? It could be painkillers of different kinds. It could be alcohol and drugs. It could be a relationship. It could be sex. It could be other addictive practices or substances. It could be shopping. It could be spending money. It could be scrolling your social media feeds, addictive behaviors that are just time wasting. It could be binge watching television, crashing in despair or depression. But God has a better way, okay? David's alone. He has no access to any of these mind-numbing substances or practices. What does he choose to do? He chooses to sing. He says, I will sing praise unto thy name forever. And in singing praise, he says, this is what I'm going to do forever. He's tying his heart off to forever hope, forever promises. It's a very, very powerful thing. But I think this is interesting, okay? Verse 8, it brings us to a wonderful conclusion. I tell you what, I don't want to rush it. For today, take away the worship, okay? Open up a playlist, build your own playlist. I've got playlists that are invigorating, motivating. I've got playlists that are calming and peaceful and restful and everywhere in between, okay? You pick the songs of God that speak to you His truth, that teach you His word, that reignite and resurge your call and your purpose and reset your love for Him, and spend some time with Him and make it a habit. Make it a habit, okay? Implant the practice of daily worship into your life on a regular basis, and you'll be a different person, and you'll bring a different person to the people of your life, to your family, to your spouse, to your work environment, to your church family. You'll bring a different person if you will establish the habit of singing praise unto His name. I'll stop there because the very end of this psalm, I think, is pretty special.